Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Superman and Lois Season 3. So we are, a few episodes deep now into the newest season of Superman and Lois, and there are a few different storylines that are being developed and just sort of, laid out for the rest of the season. Well, at least you'd assume for most of the season, if not the whole thing. These including Bruno Mannheim and some stuff to do with This Earth John Henry Ides and his backstory and some various connections to all of that. But one of the storylines that has definitely had the most screen time and focus so far, at least up to this point in this season, which at the time of making this is in the lead up to episode 4, is that of Lois Lane's Kancer storyline. Now, one of the things that has been tossed up with this story with Lois and her illness is the resolution with it, which to some might seem like we're jumping the gun, but the show is called, spoiler alert, Superman and Lois. Like, she's not going to pass away, at least you would assume she's not going to. So how she overcomes this cancer diagnosis and the journey around that is sort of the point of interest for most. And they have set her up going through the traditional route of various therapy and remedial sessions, but there is that stuff lingering in the background with Bruno Mannheim and the various testing going on with Henry Miller, aka Atom Man, who himself has surpassed his life expectancy after developing a brain tumor. I think it was a brain tumor from memory. Now, the showrunners have suggested that this is considered as a solution by Lois going forward, like, how is Henry Miller still alive? Can that help me out? Everything like that. But it seems like that won't be what she does. However, Bruno Mannheim is clearly working on developing something and having some sort of end goal. So what is it? And more importantly, what is the end goal? Now, we covered this, I think it was about a week or so ago, roughly. Can't remember exactly when that video came out, but it was a video going over the possibility of Doomsday. Yes, Doomsday being the, big boss battle at the end of the season based on some stuff from the filming of the finale for this season. And, this had been a valid question, leading up to that point, saying that Bruno Mannheim and Lex Luthor were the already announced villains for this season, and it was like, okay, well, where's the muscle? Where's the physical threat in the finale, or at least for most of the end of this season? Like, who's Superman fighting? Or is it like a non-really overly action, season or something like that? And while Lex Luthor can whip out his exosuit, you'd expect more, considering the previous two villains from seasons 1 and 2, and their physical threat to Superman and all that. But a few people did point out another possibility as to who could be fighting Superman in the final fight at towards the end of this season, as it appeared that whatever the villain is, they will be CGI, and they were described as a monster that, quote, had spikes growing out of it. So, when you read that description, all signs point to Doomsday with that, right? Well, yeah, but also no, because it can be an even split to another character who is much less well known. Like, honestly, I hadn't heard of the character before. It's sort of like, seems like it was a, just a one storyline sort of villain. But honestly, they fit really, really perfectly into this season, even more after the most recent episode that has been released, that being episode 3, and just sort of what we learned in that episode. And this villain or threat is that of Kancer. Yes, Kancer, but with a K. So, yeah, it's a bit on the nose considering what's happening with Lois this season, but most comics, usually aren't that overly subtle. And even in the comics, it has to do with, I guess, cancer as well. So let's not avoid it. Who the hell is Kancer with a K? Well, in simple terms, Kancer is a creature, somewhat humanoid by the end of it, that is made up of extracted DNA or cancerous DNA from Superman. Sounds familiar. But to be more in-depth, in the comics, Superman was infected with a form of cancer through the use of kryptonite to get into his system. And on the brink of death, Superman had this cancer extracted and survived. Thankfully. Long live Superman. However, the cancerous cells from Superman were kept intact, and they grew into a creature that was dubbed Kancer, obviously with a K. And due to the fact that it was a cancerous organism within Superman, it kept that Kryptonian DNA, which gave it the same effects as being a Kryptonian, like Superman, like I guess to an extent Superboy, like General Zod, or the Supergirl, all them. And this includes getting power from the yellow sun. And I think also because it was more exposed because of what it was, it actually got even more powerful, or at least retained more power from the yellow sun or something like that. With it eventually growing into a much larger creature with these crystal looking things on its body, which look quite spiky, and maybe they could, spikes growing out of it, if you want to put it, which relates back to what was seen or heard on the set of the season 3 finale for Superman and Lois. Now, of course, when you hear this, there's a lot of different things that connect to stuff that we've already seen this season, whether it be like almost like directly or like, little seeds being planted that could, then grow into stuff, leading into deeper into the season and more towards the end. So of course, in the most recent episode, which sort of shined a light more on this, so I heard people saying, hey Pagey, what about this guy, Kancer? But this was before episode 3 aired, so all this blood stuff with Superman hadn't even been mentioned yet. So that's pretty crazy. So as soon as Superman's blood was mentioned and being taken, I was like, man, this could be what's happening now, because we can have it being mixed in with cancerous cells, say from Henry Miller's tumor, and then sort of being put back into someone's system, whether it be Henry Miller or someone else, sort of making them eventually into cancer. Now, at the end of last episode, we had Henry Miller sort of floating in the, is it a BAFTA tank? What is it? A BAFTA tank? Whatever the thing is from Star Wars, like the Darth Vader sleeps in or whatever it is, weird floating tank thing. Sort of like a thing like that. And you could see the blood, like there's multiple bags of blood above Henry Miller that was sort of going into like the back of his neck or something like that. So that blood is being used on Henry Miller right now. And obviously at the end of episode, I think it was 1, it looked like there was X-kryptonite or something. So it seems like it might be a couple of different things. Or maybe like the blood was being used to maybe change his DNA, which maybe would try and increase the ceiling for his powers. We're not too sure exactly what's happening with how things are working. I think that's for like the next handful of episodes of the show to explain. But we just know there's a couple of different things being used in conjunction with what's happening with Henry Miller. But yeah, I guess the base thing that we can assume is that maybe Superman's blood is sort of being mixed with cancerous cells, because we know Henry Miller had a tumor, and then it can be developed into something else, whether it goes back into Henry Miller or something else, and then just make a solution that can be injected or put into someone else's system that makes them into potentially Cancer with a K. Now, obviously, in the comics, Superman is the one that's infected where this cancerous organism sort of stems from. So will Superman be infected at any stage if it is Cancer with a K that is being played out to be this big threat, or will it just be his blood that plays into it? And I would assume because they've set up the blood already being a thing, it would just be the blood. I don't know if they would bother doing the Superman route, because I think you could just done that without having all the bags of blood there, unless they need more of it. But then again, maybe they could just get some DNA from him, so they could literally try to get like hair or something from him, something weird like that. I don't know if they need Superman to get infected now, just because they have all that blood there. So I'm just going to assume it's just the blood that plays into it, and it's other cancerous things like from Henry Miller and his tumor, and maybe other people as well that sort of like develop the storyline. Now, obviously we've been talking about Henry Miller. Is he going to be the one that becomes Cancer, if that's the villain that's being used, or is it someone else? Because as we said at the end of episode 3, we had like Henry Miller in the tank, but we also have the people in front of him, like, Bruno Mannheim's right-hand man, saying that like Henry Miller has reached his ceiling pretty much, and they will need someone else to push their work further. Henry Miller looks pretty pissed off when this is happening. He's not liking the guy that's in front of him and sort of like not liking what's happening to him. So if they do go to someone else, surely it would have to be someone already with powers if that's the case, because wouldn't just every human have a similar ceiling in regards to how much they can take? So maybe it would have to be someone who already has powers or something like that. But then again, we know that Henry Miller's actor is up until the finale. Like I think he filmed like at 8 or 9 was the episode that he last filmed, and he said he was done for the season, and then he said he was coming back for the finale. So maybe that's because they had to do something where they showed that Henry Miller was Cancer, or maybe like the actual like big monstrous version goes away and we're left with the normal dude looking version. I'm not too sure, but Henry Miller probably is the most likely option just because he's there. But you think if they had to get someone who could actually raise the ceiling, it would have to be someone that actually has powers, which then leads into what are the other options out there as to someone that could be infected with this and potentially become Cancer if it is something that plays into this season and isn't just a random cancerous organism that grows like in the comics. Because that's the thing. It might not be anyone. It might not be Henry Miller. It might not be Joe Blow. It might just be some random organism like in the comics that grows into this monster. That's a highly likely thing because, as we said before, it seems like the creature is completely CGI. It's not a villain, like a random guy with makeup and powers. It's a fully CGI villain anyway, so maybe it is just the organism that grows. But if it is someone and it's meant to be more powerful than, Henry Miller, you'd have to assume it's, as I said, someone with powers like maybe Superboy, Tal Rowe, or maybe even like Jonathan Kent, like someone that has Kryptonian DNA. I mean, there's a couple of options. I know the option with like a lot of people's theories with John Henry Irons from this Earth, like is he actually dead? Are they using him? That's always a topic of conversation and a potential theory in the waiting. So maybe it could be him. But I just have a feeling it's either going to be Henry Miller and they just find a way to keep pushing him, or it's like it is just like a CGI cancerous organism creature thing. And maybe it's something that's ripped out of Henry Miller. Maybe they think they failed and they just sort of dump Henry Miller and maybe the organism just comes out of him and turns into something. I'm not too sure exactly how it's going to work, but it just seems like it'd be one of those two options of either Henry Miller or just a fallen organism if it is going to be, this Kancer with a K that is actually the villain. When I was talking about Doomsday seemed just very unlikely. I'm like, are they really going to do Doomsday? And when you do Doomsday, you associate it with death of Superman. I don't think they're going to kill Superman. So it being this character that sounds even more like what's happening on the set of the finale and plays into the storyline just seems like a much more likely thing. So if I had to put money on it, I'd probably be putting my money on Kancer, which is a weird term to be saying, but that's probably what I'd be doing at this stage. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know your opinions in the comment section down below. What do you think it is? Does this make sense? Does it sound like it lines up with a couple of different things already happening in the season? Let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.